Okay, let's talk right now about the second stimulus. We've got some big news on the second stimulus front, and I'm worried about Friday's jobs report. This is where my concern is. So my question to you is, do you think Friday's job report will end up killing the chances for a second stimulus? Or at the very least, blunting the effect of that second stimulus or the size of the second stimulus? The reason I bring that up is because after we got that jobs report on Friday, a number of Republicans took to social media, called up reporters, texted reporters, and their offices were texting back and forth, and they had a few comments to make. Namely, this one that was sent to the New York Times. "Goodbye, Phase 4, wrote one Republican in a text to the New York Times. And it didn't stop there. There were plenty of others as well who basically saw the jobs report on Friday as an opportunity to take a pass on the next stimulus because it looked so good. But of course, we had revised numbers, right? It was at 13%, and those numbers were then revised to 16% just a few hours later. But many mainstream media were still reporting those phony numbers all through the weekend. It was remarkable. So all of the mainstream media was still reporting these numbers up through Sunday. I even saw them. And I was sitting there saying, what in the world is going on here? Where they're still reporting these numbers on different news channels all the way through the weekend. I ended up seeing a Fox News story on Saturday. Then I saw another one on CNBC on Sunday. So the mainstream media was still reporting 13% numbers when these numbers were revised. I don't get it. I didn't understand it. I still don't. They know that they were revised up. They were worse. In fact, so instead of them going down, it went up to 16%. Now, one of those stories was Kevin Hassett. Kevin Hassett, White House economic advisor, was on he was on Charles' show this weekend on Saturday on Fox News Channel, and they're still showing those numbers when he was asked about a second stimulus. So my fear in all of this is that Republicans are going to say these new numbers are enough to put a pause on this. Here was Chuck Grassley over the weekend. He said he's not in a hurry to pass another relief bill. A spokesman for Grassley pointed to the jobs report as a reason that Congress should not rush to pass expensive legislation responding to the pandemic. That's Chairman Grassley's Republican senator's point about the stimulus. So we're hearing from a number of different Republicans on this. But Kevin Hassett on Saturday from the White House said this about the next stimulus.
Will there be another stimulus package?
Yeah, there definitely will be. But one of the things that the president has instructed the team to do is to watch the numbers carefully, get as many real-time numbers as we can, and have a menu of options for him that's conditional on how the economy's doing. And so if we have another bunch of job numbers like we've seen, as going into July, then I could imagine it would be a much different Phase 4 bill than if we had a whole bunch of months like April. And so the president is doing exactly the right thing, which is he built a bridge that basically lasts until about the end of July. And so we're going to use that time to monitor the economy and think about what the best policies are. But I'm sure there'll be a Phase 4 deal because there are things like liability protection and so on that really have to happen.
Right.
So liability protection is one big thing, of course, that Republicans want in the Senate. So that's Kevin Hassett saying we will definitely have another stimulus. But this wait and see approach, which is going to then unfold over the course of the month of June. So if any of you are waiting on a new stimulus that's going to happen in the next few weeks, forget about it. Forget about it. The earliest we probably will see it probably won't be until the August break, according to Roy Blunt from Missouri. He's one of the leaders in the Senate. He says, my personal belief is that we will do something before the August break. That's about the right timing, end quote, according to Roy Blunt. There are some other proposals, which we'll get to in a second. But what about that unemployment that's going to run out soon? That $600 unemployment that's going to run out at the end of July. What's going to happen there? There is not a big appetite to continue that, but the job report underscored why Congress should really take a look at this thing and not rush to pass expensive legislation, because they need to figure out what's going on with this whole thing. And if they're going to be looking at these, so they're basically saying, we're not going to continue the unemployment benefits past July because, look at the jobs report. But the jobs report is still at 16.3%, revised up from 13%. So it went up again. So if you're sitting back there, Chuck Grassley, and you're saying the jobs report underscores why Congress should take a thoughtful approach and not rush to pass expensive legislation, I think you should take a step back and look at this more broadly and say, okay, wait a second. These numbers are often revised, and they were revised since March, they were revised since April. They were wrong at every stage. And this also doesn't account for the people that just have stopped looking for work. Those people have taken out of the number. They're just fed up. They don't know what to do. So anyway, Chuck Grassley is holding a hearing on this on Tuesday, so tomorrow. They're going to have a hearing on the unemployment benefits that are set to run out. So we'll probably hear more from Chuck Grassley and the members of the Senate tomorrow about the unemployment numbers. So if you're curious about that, I'll have an update for you tomorrow on that after that hearing, what that $600 unemployment will look like. A lot of people are saying that according to the numbers, this $600 unemployment is hurting us because people are not wanting to go back to work. They're making more money from unemployment than they were while they were working. So there's an incentive for them to stay home. So Republicans and many Democrats want a proposal that will stimulate people to get back to work. So that's where we're looking at some of these other proposals this morning, including Texas Representative Kevin Brady. He's the top Republican in the House Ways and Means Committee. And he introduced a bill this week that would allow workers to keep up to 2 weeks of supplemental federal benefits after accepting a job, comparing it to a $1,200 stimulus payment, basically, is what he's saying. And that would be available until July 31st. So basically giving you an incentive to accept a job. I think most people would like a job. If there was a job, we just heard from somebody in our chat today saying, look, I've been applying for jobs left and right. I want a job. 62 years old, I want a job. And I'm facing eviction if I don't. Another proposal is similar one. There's one being floated right now by Rob Portman of Ohio. I've reported that here before. That would provide a $450 per week to those returning to work through the end of July. So an extra incentive to get back to work. And we'll give you another $450 per week to go back to work. And there's also other incentives right now from the White House, other incentives to get you back onto the labor force. But, if we're tying our hopes and dreams to this jobs report, and you have Republicans saying, hey, look, this is an incentive for me to not have another stimulus. I mean, I'm just struck by this text from a Republican to the New York Times. Goodbye, phase 4 stimulus. Kind of like, okay, there you go. There's your stimulus down the toilet. Well, we do have a new watchdog on the stimulus program. Here's a bit of good news so that this money doesn't get misspent. We have a new watchdog. His name is Brian Miller. There he is behind a mask. The post, this new watchdog post, was voted on by Congress. It passed the Senate. The post was created at the insistence of Democrats, wanted this, to supervise the Treasury Department's use of the $500 billion so that it wouldn't be misused. $454 billion are earmarked to support Federal Reserve lending to companies and state and local governments. So that's the main piece of this. They wanted to make sure that this got out to state and local governments. The rest is to help airlines, cargo companies, businesses, and also other businesses deemed essential for national security. Only one Democrat voted against this, or voted in favor of it, was Senator Doug Jones of Alabama. He's the only one that voted for this guy, Brian Miller, because they thought that he was too cushy with the White House, this guy. So it's the White House is going to be watchdogging itself, basically, which is never a good to me is never smart. But there you go. At least we have a, in name only, a watchdog who's going to be watching out for the stimulus money to make sure it's being spent properly. So that's today's show, everyone. I would love to open it up for a little Q&A today. And subscribe to the channel if you're new here. We try to do the show Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern time, to talk about the economy, to talk about the stimulus, to talk about unemployment and then things that matter most to you. Also to help educate you and build you up so that you can build financial intelligence, start your own business, and move in that direction. That's the goal with this show. So please subscribe and hit that little bell notification so you know when we go live.